My name is Wright, and I am the new pastor here at Williamsburg Baptist Church. When my wife and I first got married, we started attending a small but growing Baptist church in Richmond's Fan District called Tabernacle Baptist Church. And at the time, she was a brand new social worker, and I was a grad student. So you can imagine that our budget was literally on a shoestring. We would reuse tea bags because we couldn't afford new ones, and we would eat lots of rice and beans. And I remember that first winter we played a game where we tried to see how long we could go before we turned the heat on. When I look back to that time, what strikes me is that we didn't give very much money to the church in that season. We just couldn't. We didn't have it. We didn't have a lot of disposable income floating around. It wasn't that we were poor by, most of the world's standards. We had 2 cars, we had a computer, and at the time we had iPods. It's just that most months we didn't have much left over by the time our rent check came due and the bills went out in the mail. So we had to be very deliberate about what we bought, and we had to be creative by the end of the month about what we were going to eat. At the time, I remember thinking, one day when I graduate and get a job, when we're a dual income family, then we'll really be able to financially contribute to the church. We'll double our income, we'll continue to live cheaply, and we'll have tons of money left over, right? Anyone had that experience? Is that how life works? That's not how it turned out, of course. Now we have a mortgage, we have children, we have, a number of other bills that come into our lives regularly. We do have more income now than we made when we were first married, but we found ways to live into it, so to speak. I think when it comes to giving, most of us never feel like we quite have enough. And so you don't start giving to the church when you have enough. I give even when I don't feel like I have enough. I don't give because I'm wealthy or because it doesn't hurt a little bit to write a check to the church. I don't give because I need to have a tax write-off at the end of the year either. I give because I believe in the ministry of this church. I give because I believe that through the life of this church, through Williamsburg Baptist, that God is glorified and that Jesus' mission is continued here on earth. I believe that this church is one in which the kingdom of God advances through the witness of love that we share with the community. When I think back on the time where Beth and I first joined that church and we were first married, we started giving money right away because it was in our DNA, it was in our family history. We didn't wait until we felt like we had tons of surplus money to give. We gave what we could, and we gave to the point that it hurt some, and we gave trusting that God would provide anyway. And lo and behold, here, nearly 14 years later, 14 years of marriage, God has certainly continued to provide, and we continue to give. I find a great challenge in the example of an unnamed widow in the New Testament. I hope you will too. It's the story in Mark 12 where Jesus sits down opposite the treasury in the temple, and he watches a crowd filing in, putting their money in the temple's coffers. Lo and behold, he sees a widow come along, and she puts 2 pennies in, 2 what we now call widow's mites. They're the smallest denomination of money, I think, in the history of humanity. And yet she puts them in, and Jesus says, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more in this offering than everybody else who is contributing today. They contributed out of their abundance, but she in her poverty has given what she had to the glory of God." I hope you'll consider giving or continue giving support the ministries of this church, especially in this tough season and this tough year of pandemic. We have a lot of reason to be optimistic about the future, but until then, we're trying to keep the lights on, so to speak. We think that 2021 is going to be a really good year for us. We're excited about the ways God is leading us, and we have a strong sense that God is at work in our midst. We think we're going to look back on this season and think, it was really hard, but God brought us through it. And the faithful giving of so many also brought us through this season. On behalf of Williamsburg Baptist Church, thank you for all the ways that you support the mission and ministry of this congregation, whether it's through financial giving or the gifts of your time or prayers. We're so grateful. God bless.